Mama and Barney, Part 2. They all live happily ever after. Mama turned 17 on July 14, 1944, and Barney was there to help her celebrate. It didn't take long before she decided to let this puppy follow her home. By September, she was pregnant. Mama never shared that part of the story with me, though. It would be decades before I thought through the timelines and figured it out for myself. She never wanted me to know she had given in to her human desires, that she didn't always follow the evangelical church's demands. She kept that part of herself hidden, maybe to protect me or maybe because she couldn't forgive herself. If I'd known, I wouldn't have been nearly so hard on myself when normal human feelings started peeking through the window. Mama married Barney on Halloween that year, killing two birds with one stone. She was leaving her one-horse town and getting away from her mother for good. She barely noticed the gray skies and freezing temperatures. This was the start of something new, and it was all pretty much Mama's own doing. She hadn't figured on getting pregnant, but Barney showing up when he did was her way out of Granny's house and into something that felt like freedom. Accommodating this unexpected turn of events set the wheels in motion quicker than she might have planned, but she had no complaints about that. Granny was horrified that her only daughter was pregnant and unmarried. "You can't tell nobody, Darlene. Just say the baby came early." On top of that, for Quakers, getting married on Halloween was a problem. It was a day full of immodesty and bad behavior, not to mention its pagan roots. Mama getting married at the courthouse on Tuesday and not at the meeting house on Sunday piled one embarrassment on another. "You're going to be the death of me, girl. Someday you'll have kids of your own and maybe even a daughter. You'll see. I hope they're as rotten to the core as you." I wonder if Granny was thinking of her own mother when she said those words. Maybe she saw herself in Mama's rebellion, and it stirred something raw she didn't want to face. When I was a child of 4 and damn hard to handle, Granny told me how she had been a handful herself. By the time she was 8 years old, Granny skipped more school than she attended. When her ma came out to chase her down and spank her, Granny'd climb up on the barn and say, "Follow me you can't, and killin' you daresn't." Granny finished 3rd grade that year and never went back. Mama was just one in a long line of strong-willed women. Granny had her rebellious streak, and her ma had hers too. It seemed the fighting spirit got handed down whether we wanted it or not. Mama's firstborn daughter would be no different. Bunny Burrell Barnhart, she'd change her middle name to Joe when she was 25, was born at home on June 14, 1945, on Fifth Avenue in Moline, Illinois. The Mississippi River surrounded the Rock Island Arsenal, just a stone's throw away from their first apartment. Darlene became a mom 1 month before her 18th birthday, 3 weeks after her classmates graduated from Grinnell High School, without her. I'm sure Mama felt a mix of pride and loss that summer, cradling her baby while the world kept moving on. Well, she got her daughter, with Granny there to help bring her into the world, but the love she felt for this baby from the moment she saw her was beyond anything anybody had ever told her about. This little person was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. So tiny, not even 5 pounds, she looked just like a little bunny, hence her name. Barney wasn't around when the baby came, but 3 days later, when he finally showed up again, he said he'd been out celebrating with friends. Had he been there, he would have had something to say about that name. But it hadn't taken long for Mama to stop expecting much from Barney, and she couldn't care less about his opinions. Too late to complain about something he forced her to do on her own. She just shrugged it off, cradling her newborn baby girl, wondering how her mama could ever wish she didn't have a daughter. Those early months with Barney were full of thrills that helped Mama forget what had come before. Late-night rides with the windows down, the rush of his hand in hers, the way he made her laugh until her cheeks ached. It was all mostly fun at first. Then it got hard. Really hard. And now she's making supper for 2 little girls sitting at a table gaping wide-eyed at their daddy pulling up the kitchen floor, hollering about G-men. Mama thought she's seeing things when a stack of sawed-off shotguns and what looked like a few machine guns piled inside 3 wooden crates marked Hawkeye mincemeats came into view. Fear prickled at the back of her neck as her stomach churned. She wanted to scream at Barney, but she knew better. He wasn't in the mood to listen. When Barney yelled, "You gonna help me or not?" she snapped out of disbelief and grabbed the first crate of guns coming out of the floor. It was heavy. She shouted back, "I thought you told me you were keeping these guns in the shed down the hill." "I got 'em there, too. This here's the overflow. I ain't about to say no to the guys we work for, Darlene. We're in it up to our asses," he growled, his hands shaking as he wiped sweat off his forehead. His eyes darted toward the window like he's expecting headlights to pull up any second. "Stop talking and help me get these down to the river. We got to get rid of 'em, now." The crate scraped against the floor as she hauled it up, the weight of the guns nearly dislocating her shoulder. Mama set her crate near the front door and came back to tie Bonnie in her high chair with one of the extra aprons that hung on the hook near the icebox. She wrapped the apron around her youngest daughter, tying it to the wooden back slats of the chair, her mind drifting, searching for something soft to hold on to amidst the chaos. Going back to simpler times, she was transported to her childhood and the old homestead where she lived with her daddy, back before he left. Sundays were the best day of the week, and not just 'cause they didn't have to go to school. It was her favorite 'cause her daddy was always at home. Granny took her and her brothers to church, but they knew Daddy'd be waiting on 'em when they got back. He wasn't the religious type, and he always seemed to have other things to do. But when the kids came home on Sunday, there was nothing in the world more important to their daddy than time with his children. Right after church, while Granny made dinner, her daddy sat in his favorite chair. He called Mama up on his lap while the boys gathered around his feet, and then he'd read the funny papers like nothing else in the world mattered. The Sunday Des Moines Register brought the world to your door. Her daddy always told him that when he got tired of what the world had to say, the Sunday comics, always in full color, would come to the rescue. Sometimes Mama went with him to the store on the corner where they bought the paper. It was so heavy, Mama struggled to pick it up. It cost a whole dime, twice what the weekday edition cost, but her daddy never hesitated. "Worth every penny," he'd say as he lifted her on his shoulders when they headed back home. He made her the queen of the world when she sat up there. Little Orphan Annie was Mama's favorite. She'd lose herself in that little redhead's adventures with her dog Sandy. Her daddy always read it before anything else. He'd hand her the funny papers with a wink, his fingers rough from years of work. "Ladies first," he'd say as he gave his little girl a big kiss on the cheek and settled back in his chair to make room for her. Next, the boys went flying through space with Buck Rogers, their daddy's deep voice bringing the galaxy to life. Together, they kept the universe safe from evil forces, if only for a little while. Those Sundays made her and her brothers feel like the world was a safe place to be, a feeling that vanished the day their daddy walked away. The Sunday comics were prized for the joy they brought to Mama and her brother's life with their dad, but they were treasured for their color. Every week's comics were read, then safely tucked away in a chest that sat at the end of her parents' bed. In December, they became wrapping paper for their Christmas presents. Mama knew which gifts were hers because they were decorated with little Orphan Annie's bright red hair on top. Reading the comics with her daddy every week was a taste of the joy to come at Christmas. Opening her gifts on Christmas morning, Mama would carefully peel back the paper, trying not to tear little Orphan Annie's face. Those gifts carried a little extra magic, wrapped in the joy of Sundays past. Back then, she didn't know how rare those moments were. Now, years later, in the chaos of her own life, she'd give anything to sit in that chair on her daddy's lap and lose herself in the funny papers again. It wasn't just the stories she missed. It was the way her daddy made the world feel safe, like nothing bad could touch her. Bonnie's laughter rang out, cutting through the fog of memories and pulling Mama back to the harsh reality of her kitchen in Rock Island, reminding her of their situation. Looking at her eldest daughter, Mama said, "Be a good girl and take care of Sissy, okay?" Bunny nodded her head in agreement. The day Barney was born, Bunny became her sister's guardian. "Woman, are you coming, or am I doing this by myself?" Barney's voice thundered through the house, snapping Mama back to the present. Coming out of her daydream, she picked up the crate, her resolve hardening with each step she took toward the door. The past would have to wait. Survival couldn't. "Make sure you stay put, Susan. You got that?" she called back to Bunny, just for good measure, as she headed toward the river. All of Mama's daughters were called Susan, sometimes when we were all in the same room. How we knew which of us she was talking to was a mystery, but we did. Mama used this term of endearment when her heart was about to crack open. But it was the tiny change of inflection in her voice that told us who should answer. I was around 10 when I asked, "Why do you call us Susan?" She looked at me, but she was seeing something else, something that made her smile in a way I wasn't used to. "Your big brown eyes remind me of my favorite wildflower," she said, "the brown-eyed Susan." Then she told me about the brown-eyed Susans that grew wild in the meadows around the old homestead where she lived as a girl. That was before her daddy left her mama to go live with Jeanette, back when she was happy, before the world fell apart. I always thought it was funny that each of us girls had such unusual names, Bunny Burrell, Bonnie Bell, and Wally Faye, when the nickname she gave us, the one name she used for all three of us, was so common, Susan. When I asked her why she hadn't just named somebody Susan, she said, "How could I call just one of you Susan when you're all my beautiful brown-eyed girls?" I knew she was right, because the sound of her voice when she said it always felt like a hug. I couldn't argue with her. In that moment, it felt like being Susan wasn't just a name. It was proof that I belonged.